Welcome to the 100th episode of Expected Buffalo, the podcast. So we are going to have fun. Anthony is here with me. He's in the waiting room while I do our sponsorship read in the beginning here because we have to get that out of the way before we get to the fun. So, Expected Buffalo, the podcast brought to you by One Pie Pizza, located 2185 Clinton Street in West Seneca. They're open 7 days a week from 9 to 8. Sweet sauce, super good. Hand cut cup and char pepperoni. Like you can't like cup and char pepperoni is where it's at. That's for me. If you don't have that, then I'm not about it for pizza. Maybe that's a stickler thing. We'll see if Anthony feels the same way. He's Italian. Maybe it's a little bit different how that works. But that's where I'm at too. Breakfast pizzas too. Also a nice lineup there. So check them out. One Pie Pizza. Again, I appreciate them for being the official sponsor. Let's get him on because it's been a little bit. Let's get my man Anthony on. There he is. He is back, everybody. Mr. Sandra, how you been, man?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Also, very much a cup and char guy.
You are too? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if I was like offending or anything.
Miss me with those like big salami slices, pepperoni
Yeah.
people try to pass off. No. But I'm good, man. I'm good. Barry, it's funny. You told me 3 years ago, and you've known like when Chad and I first got like going on this years back now. He always said to me like, second kid is like a whole game changer, right? And I'm just like, nah, I can do it. I'll figure it out. Like I can do everything, and I'm superhuman. And then I just am not. I'm not. It's as it turns out. And yeah, they do so many activities, and it's great. And it's awesome, and it's like so cool to be a part of. And just I had a little bit of a introspection with myself this year as I'm watching like game 11 of the 13-game losing streak, and I'm just like, I would so much rather just be like doing anything else. Like, so I'm just like, hey kids, like, let me read a book to you in like a goofy voice. And like, I just decided to do that. And I've been doing that pretty much every night. And, just doing whatever nonsense comes to their head. I don't know, man. I couldn't justify the time I was spending on this anymore, just for myself. Right. And especially for a team that wasn't giving me very much back, you know what I mean, in terms of like watchability. I mean, it'd be different if this was like the first bad year in a string of like really good ones, or if they were otherwise promising. But I'm just like, I'm doing this again for like the 14th year in a row. Like I'm actually doing this again, and I just hated my own guts for it. So, but like again, you, Lance, especially, like those are the top two. Joe, Yurden. I mean, I give you guys a ridiculous amount of credit because you work so bleeping hard at this, right? And you don't step away from it, and you keep these people engaged through. God, just the worst, like the worst. No, you do though. Like honestly, you do. Everything you post gets so much engagement, and like there is still that hungry contingent of, I'm assuming, mostly younger people because at this point, I think anyone in their 30s is totally jaded by these guys, but who are just so hungry for it, and you kind of keep the fan base moving in a lot of ways. And like I said, I mean, Lance has to do it every single day, and I told him via DM the other day, I'm like, dude, just so you know, I give you so much like all the credit in the world, because I'd lose it, like I'd lose my mind, and clearly have. But anyway, I'm doing good otherwise. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, of course, I appreciate all the kind things you said there, and
Always.
I've certainly missed you. And
I know, buddy.
From time to time, like even like in our Discord or just messages, like how is Anthony's doing, everything okay? And I'm like, no, honestly, everything is like really good. That's the good thing. That's why he's away, because things are so good with what's going on with him. It's nothing bad. But yeah, I mean,
feel bad. It makes me feel bad. I don't want anyone to worry. No, everything's really good, actually. Yeah, like you said, I mean, work is great, kids are great. Just very busy, just like loaded up. I mean, it feels like every night I'm doing something. Whether it's basketball, which hilariously my kids are vertically challenged. That's not going to be a sport they play for long. But basketball, dance, cheerleading, tennis, golf. It's like, oh my god, like, can you guys pick up a lane? But it's great, like watching them do all that goofy stuff, and then like yell at each other who's better at it. But it's fun. It reminds me of the rivalry I had with my brothers growing up. So it's kind of neat to see.
Yeah, for sure. Getting into all that. The one thing I will say before we get into the team that people did request, no matter what, even if you fully retire and just hang up your covering the Sabres skates in any regard, the one demand people still had is once a year the voices have to come back. There has to be at least one voices.
Yeah, I'm not ready to fully retire yet. I definitely want to, continue to contribute where I can. I know it's not as much as years past where I was crapping out 2-3 articles a week. That's not on it's not on the table now, unfortunately. But I know. I mean, we're in the same boat, right?
Yep.
But no, I would definitely like to jump in. And I think this year was just a good year for me to kind of reset and just be like, look, man, like I got to prioritize some other stuff right now. As that changes, as the kids like get older and go out with friends, and as I get older and more decrepit, I'm sure like that time space will open back up a little bit for me. But I want to contribute where I can, and of course, jump on the podcast whenever I can, and even written stuff, which has, again, I think this year was just tough. Like, man, I have done iterations of this same topic so many times. Like, hey, everything's horrible, but here's a guy who might be good.
Players too, right?
It's the same players. I'm just like, I can't. I think I've caught myself a couple times like writing something like, I've written this before. Like, I'm sure I've written this. Like, it just feels like I'm reciting my own lines. Like I'm an AI server that's just like regurgitating his own like shit back to him. But yeah, no, I'm not fully retiring, not yet. But I will say I will absolutely oblige the people and bring the voices back once a year at minimum. That I can carve out easily.
Love it. Well, we do have a bit of news, not Sabres news, that did just break.
Oh.
The Vancouver Canucks, as you know, traded for Marcus Pettersson. They did not take a long time. They signed him to a 6-year extension for $5.5 million.
Ooh, that's a nice deal.
So that dream is a super nice deal.
Oh my God, that's a wonderful deal for the Canucks. I love that for them. He's a very underrated defenseman, obviously, as we all know.
Oh, 100%. So that's going to be interesting later when we talk about trades, because now that they have that on their books, Byram potentially, supposedly, a part of that Elias Pettersson trade. How does that now change perspective there?
Yeah.
We'll save that for down. No, not at all. Okay, so we have a variety of topics that we're going to talk with you today. We're going to talk about Peterka, Byram, the defense, the fourth line, and the failure of the offseason there with that. And then we're going to end and round out talking about Dylan Cozens and some trade stuff. And, of course, I have my own fun questions for Anthony at the end. Would you do this? Would you do that? Because I love to end podcasts that way.
Awesome.
So let's start with where you wanted to start. And that is JJ Peterka in that top line, reunited back with Tage Thompson, because now that is fun to see that go again. Now that Tage got hurt, it's a little bit of a bummer. But I think there's a few kind of pieces that we want to break out into this. So let's kind of start with the success overall of that line. So before this started, I looked at it. The numbers, at least for Peterka, and even that entire line, are bananas. So in the 6 games they've been together, expected goals for per 60. This is just for Peterka, but the line basically 3.77. Goals for per 60, 7.69. He's got 3 goals, 3 assists in 6 games. By the way, Tage, over that 6-game stretch, I think his goal for per 60 is up over 9.
Yeah, he's ripping it out like in an insane way. Hopefully he's Humpty Dumpty back together, but yeah.
The interesting part for me is, and I wrote about this when it happened, and I noticed it going through Corey's data, right? The tracking data, is the playmaking early in the season when the two of them were together. So Peterka was grading out as one of the top playmakers from primary assists to high danger passing in Corey's data, and I was like, that's interesting, because this is in the stretch when he was struggling. I'm like, that doesn't seem like. So I looked at what the games he tracked, and the most of them to that point in the season were Tage games. I was like, that makes sense. So then they got back together, and you started to see it pop again. You started to see the playmaking. You started to see him get the primary assists, and I think that's continued here as we go. It's not just Tage too. Now it's Cooley, and I think that's an interesting part of the whole dynamic here. And really, when you look at Tage's numbers, when I wrote that article, is his numbers actually do inflate when he plays the Peterka too. So it's really not a one-way street. Peterka definitely benefits more. But numbers definitely, they take a jump too. So I think they mesh well. And I think we could safely say like Peterka might not ever be a line driver. And, well, that's what you want. I think that's okay if he finds a balance, in the top 6 with a one or two guys, in this case Tage, where that can work going forward, then I think you're comfortable with that. You don't need every one of your players to drive a line, as long as he's a solid complementary piece. Um, yeah, I think you're okay on that. So that's where I mesh out in the whole thing. Curious of your thoughts, because like I said, this is your topic you want to get into.
Yeah, I'm on board with pretty much everything you said. I will add, I think the delta, which of course I have to use that word just for Eddie, in expected goals performance for Peterka is so interesting because of who his second most consistent center is, and that's Dylan Cozens this year. His numbers with Cozens are abysmal. So not only is it the inclusion of Tage that is ramping up his numbers, I think it's not having to drag around a very clearly broken Dylan Cozens. So that just kind of exacerbates the effect of having now Tage as your top line, your main center.
Yep.
I think what you said is accurate. I don't think Peterka will ever be a line driver, which is a little disappointing because I did think he had the potential to become one. I'm not saying that that's out the window and never going to be a thing. He's still very young, but
Yep.
It does appear that he may top out as a high-end complementary winger, and that's not a bad thing. Like that's what I would describe Jeff Skinner as. He was never a line driver. He was a high-end complementary winger. And so like if that's Peterka's ceiling, I'm not saying in terms of player prototype, they're not similar. I'm saying like in terms of, let's say raw production. That's not a bad thing. That's really okay. That's kind of great for an early second round. Early second round? Late first? I forget what we did.
Early second round. Traded up
Early
in the second
round.
round.
Yeah, that's right. Early second round pick. So like that's like a great outcome. And I know we're going to get into this. I think it's probably a good segue. It does. One thing that bothers me a little bit is I think that the counting numbers he's kind of ramping up like crazy right now are maybe going to inflate his contract value. I don't think a long term is on the table for him just mostly because of what the Sabres already have on the books right now. I think they kind of learned their lesson on that, with Cozens being the primary example and Matthias Samuelsson, and like, hey, maybe we should pump the brakes on this plan a little bit. That being said, though, with these projected cap numbers that have come out, oh my goodness, teams are going to be looking to spend. So maybe that impacts things too, the other way. So I'm curious kind of what he's going to garner. I know you had a projection, which obviously I'll let you get to, and we can, I guess, discuss if we think that's good value.
Yeah. So a couple things to your point. So yeah, he's pacing up over 60 points right now, which again, with his struggles, I think in the middle of this, as we can call it, the middle of the season where we are now, and even though we're in the middle, you know what I mean, in the middle part.
He had catching up to do. He had catching up to do to get to a half point per game clip. Yeah. I mean, he's just gone nuclear.
Yep. So up over 60-point pace right now. So then that gets you into the conversation we were saying. Does it make sense, bridge, long term? I agree with you. I think if they're going to do anything, it's probably a bridge here. So I went and looked for a couple comps, if you will. Bridge guys that they were a little bit older. These guys, especially Middlestat and Natchez. So they're two of the ones that I grabbed. So Middlestat 3 years, 5.75. Natchez 2 years at 6.5. And then the one that's maybe the closest comp here is Trevor Zegras. 3 years, 5.75. So when Zegras signed his contract, he was coming off of 2 60-point seasons, which is what Peterka is on pace to put up right now. So, okay, then I started doing, let's say like Zegras makes sense if we're going to do a bridge. So that was 3 years, 5.75. Now that was 2 years ago. So we know we're supposed to go by cap percentage. So at the time it was 6.8% of the cap. So if we go next year, I just put a projection $95 million cap. That is what has been out there. That works out to 6.89% of a $95 million cap is 3 years at $6.5 million. So that takes him to the year right before he still will have 1 more year of restricted free agency when it's left. He'll have 6 years completed and he'll be 26 years old. So he doesn't have the 7th year. He's not 27. So he'll still be an RFA. Now you're going to have to deal with arbitration at that time, but doesn't commit long term. So I'll throw it back to you. Right now, if JJ Peterka said he would sign for 3 years, 6.5, are you doing that?
Yeah, for sure. And because I think you've got enough of a sample now with Tage to know you have a locked-in top-line left winger to play with your franchise center, right? And you already know you have the right winger in Tuck. They've got enough of a storied history where now you actually have a real productive first line that you can lock in now for 3 years, not have to worry about it. I think Tuck maybe actually might only have 2 left after this one, but regardless, either way,
Yeah.
You have that locked in. I think that's valuable in and of itself. You don't have to restart the groundwork of finding that, top line left winger, who most of which would cost you more than 6.5 million a year.
Yep.
So I think that's a really good deal and a safe bet for the Sabres. I think you get all that value and then some, because I think man, this is, aside from the latest stretch, this is about as rough of a year as he could have, kind of imagined to start. And I don't necessarily foresee that happening again. And like I said, I think we're maybe not giving enough credence to the idea that Dylan Cozens just dragged him into the dirt to a degree. So I like it. I think, yeah, right. I know. I think it's reasonable enough. I would sign up for that, and I like your idea of not going much longer than that because I don't really see a point, and I think they've made that mistake too many times too recently to really think that's going to happen again.
So here's the question I was thinking about. I'll ask you.
Okay.
So I was going through this, and I was, looking at this stuff, and I had Puckpedia open, and I was like, he's not an arbitration guy, right? And I'm like, no arbitration. Okay. In a normal world, and maybe we're still in it.
Okay.
I would say, well, I don't really got to worry about an offer sheet. But we saw 2 last year. We saw the Chicago Blackhawks trade back for their 3rd round pick, so they have the flexibility to do an offer sheet.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're in a world maybe where offer sheets are maybe a thing. Believe it or not, St. Louis made an offer sheet, and teams did still make trades with them. It happened. They made trades this season. Nobody got mad. They didn't get kicked out. So you're allowed to do that. Maybe that's a thing now. So I was thinking, like, nobody would really offer sheet the Sabres because, they have a lot of cap space. It'll smash.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm like, well, if it's a team that,
St. Louis had a lot of cap too.
The owner might not want to pay a lot, and so I do wonder. Like, what I'm getting to is, I wonder if they would be wise to get something done before July 1st. The last thing you need is someone to come in and get silly on you, I guess you could say. Now, I'm saying the odds of that are probably less than 20%, less than 10%. But I think it's better than maybe the years past where it was 2%. It's more plausible here.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm maybe a little skeptical that the old boys club starts to break out just because St. Louis signed a couple like middle roster players. I don't know if I see that happening.
It's worked out really well for them, though.
It is, but like, I don't know. I'm not sure that's going to be a trendsetter. Maybe it is. But I think I would say any player who's eligible to receive an offer sheet, I don't understand why GMs don't just freaking get off the pot and do it, right? Like every GM plays this crazy waiting game, and I think to save like maybe a couple bucks, you end up alienating a player who's just like, wow, damn, like they're just letting me hang out here. So I've never really seen much of a point. Like whenever I do, when I was young, of course, whenever I would play NHL, I would just sign all my RFAs like right away. Like, no, nobody's touching these. These are mine.
Yeah, right. Get out of here. Like, what? Yeah.
Yeah, and I never see the value really changing all that much. But maybe I'm wrong. But again, Adam seems keen to kind of, he picks and chooses, right? Where in some cases he gets up right on the stick and takes that possibility out of there. In other cases, he's like, let's wait and see. I think Peterka, especially because at no point did Lindy Ruff ever express disappointment in his game. Actually, the opposite. He's always been pretty, satisfied, it seems, with how Peterka's playing. So I think given all that, he would probably be a candidate to get it done sooner. But I guess we'll see. If I'm Peterka right now, I'm not doing anything until the end of the season just because I'm on a heater. And if I keep crapping out points, why would I not try to raise my market value? Right. But I guess we'll see.
You get moved off a line with Tage, then maybe you're like, you know what?
Now's the time. Yeah. Oh, I'm back with Cozens. You know what? Let's talk contract. Like, quick.
Okay. Let's transition here to the next guy, which conveniently is kind of a contract discussion as well. So that would be Byram, and then we're going to get into a bigger picture of the defense. But let's start with Byram here. So what do we have here? a couple of things. I think we can safely say that the Sabres came out ahead in that deal as of right now. Things have gone pretty south for Middlestat. I watched that game last night against Vancouver, and man, he was dreadful.
He's
The
had a
numbers are
tough year,
bad.
man.
Yeah, it has not gone well at all. So I guess you could say in the Sabre sense of that, okay, let's say they got over on that. Good. Okay, fine. Now you're at the point where, okay, now what? So he's a restricted free agent. Are you going to pay him a long-term deal, upwards of $7 million? Probably. I don't know if I would love doing that. You could bridge him, you can move him, but I think it's hard for me because I'm fine with keeping him on a bridge. To be clear, I'm fine with
Mm-hmm.
that. But at the same time, I'm not taking him off of trade offers like the Vancouver
Mm-hmm.
one. One of the pieces that were on the table, and I think that's what you would use him for. If you can find something else similar, a reverse Middlestat trade, if you will, you bring back a better forward and use him. Like, that's fine. You could do that too. Great, grand one.
Mm-hmm.
But I definitely think that you're gonna want to go bridge there because I'll let you talk a little bit about it. But I think for really me and probably for you is the playing away from Darlene factor. Where away from
Yeah.
Darlene, the numbers are pretty bad, like really bad almost.
They're bad.
With
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Finish your thought.
I'll finish it. With Darlene, they're much better. So now go ahead. That was the last thing I was going to spit out.
No, all good. Yeah, and I don't think they're as bad away from Darlene as like the numbers say. They put him in like the first percentile for goals per replacement. I'm like, there's no chance that's actually right? He hasn't been that glaringly terrible. I'm not looking at Matt Tennyson out there whenever he's away from Darlene. Like that's not true. So I think maybe that's an exaggerated impact, but I will say it is definitely a noticeable difference, and it's certainly not. If you're how do I want to put this? Like break even at best away from a blue chip defenseman, you're probably not a long term deal candidate. I think it would be a massive, massive mistake to extend Bowen Byram for my personal feeling is at all. I think you trade him. You take advantage of the trade value he currently has. But I think extending him long term would be a horrible mistake with the caveat like maybe I could like stomach it if they find a way to get out from the Samuelson contract and just free up that space. I mean, you're shuffling deck chairs a little bit there, but I can stomach watching Byram on a 7x7 more than I can stomach watching Samuelson on a 7x5 or whatever he's making.
4 point something, yeah.
Whatever. I'll take what's behind door number one there, but it's not an exciting prospect to me either way. The bridge deal is also uninspiring. I mean, cool, you've got a player who can play with Darlene, but like I'm pretty sure you could throw a rock in the air and hit one of those with relative ease. I mean, he's Rasmus Darlene. Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's a coin toss for me. I mean, you've heard his name mentioned enough in trade rumors where he's been floated, right? That there's enough smoke there where he's not all locked in. Where Adams like, no, he's definitely part of the future plan. He's been discussed probably at length, and that's why he's been out there so much. So I don't think Adams is keen on a long-term deal either, necessarily. But even a bridge deal, I'm like, how long do you want me to lock into this guy who I can only play in one specific place in my top four and gives me even more limited versatility than I already have? I would rather sell high and kind of cut your losses there. I mean, nobody's going to retroactively now criticize the Middlestat deal because of how poorly he's played. So you don't have that where Middlestat's tearing it up in Colorado, and you have to force this to make it work and not look like you lost value. That's not what happened here. So I think the pressure, the public perception pressure to alliterate there is maybe not as high as it would be normally. So I think now is probably the best time to trade a Bowen Byram and get value that wouldn't nauseate you.
Yeah. So like, for me, like if I was going to keep him, I think I would go 2 years. That would probably be the max. Okay. And the reason is because then doing that still leaves me a year of restricted free agency left on him, and then that makes him easier to trade. Where if I went 3 years on him, then I'm walking him to UFA, and then it seems like, well, what? I got to get a guy for a year, then I got to sign him. At least if he's RFA, well, yes, arbitration rights still. I think that it makes it easier to swallow. Because I'm certainly
Mhm.
not, and I don't think you're saying this either. Like, I'm not going out there just to find something to get him out of here. Like, if
No,
it has to be the right value, it has to make sense coming back the other
it's kind
way.
of
And if it
pointless.
doesn't, yeah, right. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't, then okay, I'll get you for a year or two, or even if it's a year, fine. Let's sign for a year and kick this down the can, like, kick can down the road, and let's be on our way. Um, I don't think he's arbitration eligible. I'm looking right now. Maybe he is actually. Where are you, Bo Byram? He is arbitration eligible, so that maybe adds a little bit of a messiness to this, I guess you could say. I thought they could just give him 1 year and go, but
Hmm.
the arbitration makes it a little bit more sticky. But even still, I think they can find ground on a 1 or 2 year deal, and then move about. But I think to your point, um, I just long term isn't there. The reports are he wants to be a 1 or a 2, and he's really never going to be that here. The Sabres have
Mm.
their 1 or 2. So if that's what he's looking for, if he wants that power play one time, which he's never going to get here, then that makes sense. And maybe you say to him, like, I get you want these things, the right deal isn't out there for us. Let's do a short term deal here, and then, we have an understanding. If something comes up for you, we can discuss it and all that kind of thing too to
Hmm.
make your way down the road. But yeah, I think if anything short term, but I would definitely, like you said, listen for what's out there.
Hmm. Yeah, you have to. I mean, at this point, if there's a market for a guy who's got such horrible metrics away from Darlene, right or wrong, you got to listen.
Right. But what that brings us to then is, let's say you do move him. Well, now you need 2 defensemen, because you have to get Darlene a new partner, which I think, like we said, is easier. I think you can get somebody decent to kind of go up there and play. Then you have to find Howard the partner still. The thing they've been looking for, I mean, God, how long has the guy been in the years? 2.5 years now. They're still
Yeah.
looking for. I mean, it just rotate through guys and guys and guys, and it doesn't work. Adams has said a couple times last year, this year, that that's one of their priorities, and still just can't hit on it. And I, it's frustrating. And this isn't to sugarcoat the season Power has had. He's had an underwhelming season for the majority of it. I think he's starting to kind of work his way back out of it now.
Hmm.
Um, and start to see some of the puck movements a little bit better. And I think he's starting to get a little bit more involved offensively. Some things that went away for a little bit for, like, 10 to 15 games, it's starting to come back in his game. But even still, like, it makes it difficult as you have a 22-year-old who's trying to learn a difficult position in this league to really, get a firm grasp of. And they're asking him to play a lot of minutes and a lot of big roles against a lot of good players. And he just doesn't have the support.
Hmm.
I mean, you have Samuelson, who maybe is a little bit better on the net, but his puck skills are zero. He can't make exits. He can't move the puck, and I think that hurts in that regard. Then you put Yoki Haru, who we know is not a good enough front defender. There's really not a lot that he does great in his game. Clifton is not a top 4, and like, it just goes on and on and on and on.
Hmm.
So I think that is one of the more frustrating things, right? That
Yeah.
Adams has been able to get.
Yeah, it's a complete failure to address it in any way. And the rebuttal of, well, which defenseman moved? A ton of them this summer, man. Like, a ton of them. I mean,
Yeah.
hell, not signing Yoki Haru and going after Shane Gostisbehere, for God's sake, like, would have been a massive upgrade. Just the status quo on defense has been such a long-standing organizational flaw. It's been their biggest detriment for how long now? I mean, the better part of a decade. And again, we're just not gonna. We didn't do a damn thing to it. They didn't do a darn thing. They just brought back the same exact group, every single person. And I defied logic. And you were the first one to really criticize it this summer. Like, hey, this is a bigger deal than people are making it out to be. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, cool. You did some retooling it forward, but you didn't do anything on defense, and that was a huge flaw. And outside of Power, you weren't really waiting for anybody to hit like their developmental stride either. Like, Samuelson was regressing hard. Yoki Haru, we know what he is at this point. Darlene's an all-star. We know that, right? Byram had potential to get better, and in ways he has, right? Sort of.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, you that was not enough. Like, I could I would listen to, not accept, but I would listen to the idea of continued development at forward, because you had so many young assets, many of whom just have had tough years, but like it looked promising. Nobody expected the years Cozens and Quinn have had, but here we are. But on defense, you couldn't really use that same logic. And so it was very, very curious that they made just no attempt at all to improve in any way on the back end. And they can't get away with that this summer. Like, they simply cannot get away with that again.
No, I mean, look, I get it. It's difficult, especially to get a right shot defenseman. It's not easy, man.
No.
It's very difficult to acquire. So I understand that, the complexity of it. But like you said, guys move. Nick Jensen moved. Buffalo Sabres was another one, right? That moved and he played really well in New Jersey.
Yeah, John Marino.
Yeah, right.
I mean, a ton of guys move.
Yeah, so that excuse doesn't really apply that much. And I said it in the offseason, like, re-signing Yoki Hari was the biggest self-inflicted damage this team could have done. It was nonsense. There was no need.
Such an unforced error.
And you're seeing, I mean, it's, you talked about the articles that you wrote, like I wrote in the offseason about this, calling this out. Like, I didn't even focus on, like, Byram can only play with Darlene. It was Yoki Haru. You can only play him with one guy, and then what do you do? Because we knew that power and Byram didn't work. And then what? You're gonna put Byram on your third pair, and then, like, it's
and what's the point of getting him right? Yeah,
right. So
and you know me, I've been kind of the biggest Yoki Haru player hater for the last 2-3 years. I never saw it in his game. I mean, the first year he was here, admittedly, like, for sure, I liked him. Like, I thought, man, I see potential there. He's 21 or 22, whatever he was when he came over. And, like, man, this kid's got something. Like, there's something here. And then, boy, has it been just nothing since. Like, literally nothing. He's giving you nothing to hang on to in his game. I think he's got the athletic ability, which is hilarious to say about an NHL player. They all, of course, have it. But I think he's special in certain ways. But I think he just has abysmal hockey IQ. Like, I never see him make a smart play with the puck or a play leaves like, oh wow, how did he thread that pass? Or, man, how did he see that in traffic? He kills your offensive flow. He's your new Scandella, where he just gets to the point and he just takes a clap bomb that he's not even that good at, and like, he's just content to fire it away. And I hesitate to say this because no NHL player is quote unquote lazy, but, like, I see a lot of laziness in his game compared to other guys who are supposed to be of the same prototype, a puck-moving defender who can make concise, accurate plays with the puck on their stick and aid in offensive transition. We've seen he has that ability. He's done it. We watched him do it. But the consistency has not improved at all. In fact, it's gotten worse over the years. And every time he just sends out an outlet pass, I'm like, dude, like, that was such a bum move. Like, why?
I think you are so frustrating.
Like he takes the path of least resistance every time, and it's very, very irritating to watch him play. And I'm 2 years removed from having enough of him, and at this point, I just don't even have it in me to hate on him anymore, because he's bad. He's a bad player. They shouldn't have brought him back.
Yeah,
and he has negative value. I'm like, cool. Now what?
Yeah, I mean, right shot defensemen at that age will always move, but again, I'm sure it's not for anything crazy. I mean, I think I told you this. I said this before a couple of times. Like, last year, like, from the team private data, like, he was one of the, if not the worst player with unforced icings last season.
Not
and
surprised.
I think he's probably going to be right up there again if I asked. That's the part. And it's always in bad situations too, where you're like, oh my god, please, you just got to make just flick it into the neutral zone. You don't need to fire it down the entire ice or miss by so much. So it's
right.
Beyond frustrating. Okay, let's move, because the defense is really starting to bother me. Let's get into more. Thinking this out as we're going through this, like, maybe we hit on a lot of negative things here, but we're gonna get the fun trade stuff at the end. The team is last. Dude, I gotta right.
Just right. By the way, just as a quick, like, aside, I was talking. I was at an event and I was talking to just this guy about the Sabres, and who knew I did, like, side work kind of coverage of them, and we were chatting, and this guy comes in and he's like, "Come on, guys!" He's like, "They've won 3 in a row." And he was like, and I laughed, but he didn't laugh. And I'm like, "Oh, you're serious?" Like, okay, I'm supposed to, like, change the whole tenor now. I see. But anyway, that was just a funny thing I experienced this week. Like, man, they're still out there.
4 in a row now. 4.
And that's why I laugh at anyone who says, like, oh my God, they wouldn't even sell out a playoff game at this point. Yeah, they would, like, easily.
All right.
I think people are so hungry for that. But anyway, just a quick aside there.
Before we get into the fourth line off-season situation, so that is a thing. So tell me if I'm wrong here.
Okay.
You go into the off-season, or you see this moves in the off-season. You see Beck Malin signed for a second-round pick. You see Lafferty signed. You see Kubel signed.
Mm-hmm.
If you had to pick two of the three to not work, would your two be Lafferty or Kubel? Or would you 100% have Malin signed in there? And because honestly, he's the one of the moves they've made that has actually been, again, for what you asked him to do, has been decent and passable. Is it second round pick worthy? Probably not. But still, I think he's an effective player. His speed, he hits, he kills penalties. He's a very good penalty killer. He does what he has to do. I think he's a younger, if you want this, here's what I'll say. If you want this, he's a younger, faster version, I think, of Gergensons. Maybe a little bit more physicality in the forecheck.
Yeah. I don't
His
think
defense,
he'll ever have.
his defense maybe isn't that great at that level, right? Yeah, sure. Okay.
I don't think he'll ever have the 5-on-5D or puck possession impact that Gergensons had. So I think you're talking about like a really poor man's Gergensons. I think you like Malenstein more than I do, and which is fine. And it's not that I hate him. I still hate the compensation it took to get him. I think that was, if you're talking to me about valuation, I still think that the two I would have thought I still see as the biggest failures were Lafferty and Malenstein, because you paid Lafferty money with term, which was like insane, and then you way over traded for what a Malenstein costs you. And like Obey Kubel was such a nothing burger. What was he, 1 year, 1.5 million? Like, okay, it didn't work. Who cares? That those don't
not
work
even
all the time.
like, 950. So
whatever it was, right? It was just such a low cost thing. Like, who gives a shit that they waived him? Like, not me. Like, you know, who would?
It'll help the Emirates in the playoff run, so that'll work.
Great. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, he could have like been waived to, you know, like the janitors union. I wouldn't have given a shit. Like, it's just like, it doesn't matter. It was such a low risk, like nothing burger. Like, what did, oh no, like $1 million off the cap that I'm 9 million away from hitting the ceiling.
It's not even, he's under $1 million, so he doesn't even count your cap.
Yeah. Whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. So that, I think I still feel the same way I did at the time, which Lafferty and Malenstein were, compensation wise, in terms of value, the dumbest moves they made, and I still believe that. Lafferty is, maybe I'll say this. I think Lafferty has taken Malenstein's place as number one of the two.
Okay,
but it's still those two. Lafferty has been goddamn garbage. I mean, like, I didn't love that deal because of the term. Like, the dollars, who gives a crap? You have so much space, right? But like, Lafferty is like a poster child for a guy who gets 1 year, and if you gotta give him $2 million for a year, okay. And like, there have been parts of Lafferty's career that I haven't hated. Like, I don't think he's ever been as bad as he's looked this year.
I didn't Vancouver last year, but we're figuring out that it was probably Garland and Joshua who dragged him along.
Early in his career in Chicago too. Like, he had some okay-ish years. Like, there was something there. And I think or Pittsburgh. I'm sorry, not Chicago. Pittsburgh. God, it was so long ago now.
I think he played for Chicago too. He played for a lot of teams.
He definitely did. I think the years I think that were good though were Pittsburgh years, if I'm not mistaken. But one way or the other, there was something there at one point, right? Obey Kubel, same deal, right? There was something there at various points in his career. Yeah, and so I didn't hate that. And again, it was such a low cost, low risk thing. Cool, like, take a flyer on the guy. But yeah, the Lafferty thing looks bad now, because now you're locked into him again next season. So like, cool. And then again, Malenstein is just, he doesn't do enough for me, man. And if you had traded a fifth for him, I'd be like, cool. Yeah, he's decent enough. He's a fourth liner. Like, that's fine. That's okay compensation. They go for that. Whatever. A second round pick though, it's so stupid. I still think it's stupid. If you're asking me if I had a button to reverse that trade, yes, easily.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I think this is where we'll disagree in the sense of what the valuation of a second round pick is. In a sense, you know, that's, I don't remember what pick it was, like if it was a mid, later,
it was
earlier.
Like 40 something. It was like 45th or whatever, I think.
Yeah. So again, your percentage hits on that are pretty low. So there's that side of the argument. But again, it's a second round pick, and a second round pick was moved to get
Mangiapane.
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Mangiapane. So like, that kind of gives you the idea of, you know, what the valuation of a second round pick was.
Yeah.
And like, for me too, like, this is a team stock pool covered of prospects. So that's one of the one you want to fire a second round pick out the door for something you value as important. I'm not going to hate you for it. Like, I get it. You see, like,
Mhm.
we have a bajillion prospects. We can afford to fire, especially in a draft where you had 3 second-round picks
Mhm.
that you're like, we can fire
Yeah,
one of
I
these.
didn't want to make the pick necessarily, but I just think for the
I get it.
value, I mean,
Better valuation, you could have used it somewhere else. Yeah,
and I'd
for
have to
sure.
dig out the tweet, but I looked at like forwards who had gone for just a second round pick over the last 3 years, and like every single one of them was better than Valentine by like a lot.
Yeah. I
So
mean, I think there's
I
still
think they missed
criticism
there.
within using that asset to get him.
Mhm.
I guess I could say I'm more happy that it's, like I said, there's, I want to be careful to use the word impact. There's positive results in certain regards there. He
Mhm.
plays the role that he's asked to play and does it effectively.
Yeah,
Bad,
he hasn't been a disaster.
yeah,
Again, I guess
yeah,
my whole thing is just I haven't seen enough to make me not still dislike that trade. I
yeah.
just
I
still
get
do.
it. That's fair. That's plenty fair. So now it's Lafferty's gone. I guess not gone, but like I think you can safely say that Ruff's kind of done with him.
Yeah, he's been
He's
scratching
not
them.
playing. He's just sitting
Mhm.
there. They're calling guys up to play over him. So
Yeah.
that's done. Kubella's already gone. I wonder if they try to find something for him. Maybe Sabres don't really eat money, but you never know. Maybe they could
Yeah.
find some for him, or you just waive him next year, or he's your 13th forward next year.
The
Wouldn't be a
tough
big deal.
part of that is he's got the second year, right? Where if he was on
Yeah,
1 year, yeah, you could definitely get a playoff team to bite on some depth, right? A fringe team who's not looking to do anything crazy, yeah, throw you a
yeah,
seventh rounder for Sam Lafferty, great.
yeah,
But no,
yeah,
that second year, I think he's completely untradeable.
yeah. You might be right, but the good news is that they have found something in a 7th round pick, a former 7th round pick, in Tyson Kozak, who has stepped up and done a pretty decent job when called upon. Now it's unfortunate that he's sick and lost what they say 7-8 pounds, which is insane.
It's a lot
Um,
for someone his size too. It's not like
yeah,
he's rolling at 240. Like, okay,
right.
well, 7 8 pound. No, like he's like a buck 60. Like that's a lot of weight.
Yeah, right. And for a guy who plays that role he plays, the forechecking,
Mhm.
that's kind of a big deal. But that's good. You found that and it works there.
Mhm. I
I
love
do want to
Tyson
say,
Jack. I always have. I've always been such a
oh
fan of
yeah,
his.
see, I know he's been your guy since early on. Yeah,
He's been my guy, and it was looking there like he was never going to get a look, you know what I mean? And then he just comes out this year for Rochester and just guns blazing and gets that chance. And look at him now. I mean, he just got the opportunity and he's seized it. He's such a grimy little shit. I just love his game so much. Like he's like a very, very, very light version of Benson in a way where he's just so tenacious on the forecheck and he's not big, but he's kind of he's a scrounger, like a little honey badger. I'm a fan. I love that kind of game. The scrappy little dude who annoys the hell out of you.
it's in there on the play, right? I mean, it was unfortunate because I think last year he would have got opportunity, but it seems like whenever the opportunity presents itself, is he's injured in the AHL. It's like this,
That's a
like
great
never
point.
gets that call up because he's always hurt when the opportunity
Mhm.
presents itself. But it worked out for him this year. Yeah, he started great. Like even the tracking data I was doing, like he was excellent in the numbers. Even so, like productive wise, offensively to start the season
Mhm.
was really good. I mean, he'll never be that at the NHL level, but I think that's you got yourself an effective 12th, 13th forward. And my God, if a 7th round pick gets you that, you're doing
You
backflips if you
nailed
pick
it.
that 7th round. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. Like that's almost best case scenario.
yeah, right. Better than best case scenario, if you
It's
will.
why Victor
Uh,
Olofsson continues to get work because like he was a 7th round pick despite his flaws. Like he's in the 99.9th percentile of what 7th round picks in the NHL become.
Legitimately though,
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy when you think about it. I forget that he was a 7th round pick. Like when you
I
think
know.
about it, how long he's been in the league, how many goals, and like
No, it's
he's a one
crazy.
for 20, but still, like there he goes, 7th round
And
pick,
he's
still
he's got
going.
that trick and he's made millions of dollars with that trick.
Yeah,
How's he
good
doing
for him.
this year? I haven't looked at him at all.
I don't even know if he's healthy or hurt in
I
Vegas.
have
I don't know. I
no
know he
clue.
started off really hot and then he got hurt. I don't know how that's still going. I haven't checked. I
So
don't care
he's
about
well,
technical
I
things
gotta
in
tell you,
Vegas.
man, he's got 19 points in 33 games. Pretty
Not
good.
bad.
He's pretty good. 11 goals. Like, hey.
I think he had like 10 of those in the first 2 weeks, but
Yeah, he did. Oh
I
my
think
god.
classic like Olofsson style, right? He'll score 10
Yeah.
goals in 2 weeks, then he won't score for 3 months.
And those kind of forwards are always streaky, but he is like really
Yeah.
streaky. Like, oh my god.
He'll end the season with 20 goals, but he'll only have 2 goals where he scored 10 goals in those 2 months. It'll only be 2
Right.
months the entire season where he scored. But he hammered the net in those 2 months.
Yeah.
Good old Olofsson. All right, let's get to some trade stuff to end us here. right? Get to some fun.
Mhm.
Okay. So a lot has actually happened around the league. A lot of big trades, and that's always fun and good to see, especially the Rotten trade. Like whoever saw that thing coming.
Right.
That was a nice fun one in the middle of the year. But the Sabres have themselves, well, two things. They themselves have been in trade conversations for Elias Pettersson. They've been very connected to that. That didn't, for now, hasn't worked out, and Vancouver made a different decision, and we'll see how that plays out. But now the Dylan Cozens conversation. And so he was, like we talked about Byram earlier, he was one of the guys that was heavily involved in that discussion. Now there's been reports over the last 2 days of him being connected to various teams. So Pierre LeBrun had him connected to Calgary. And then Kevin Weeks, after posting a picture of Chippewa, decided to wait 24 hours to tell everybody news we already knew.
It was
But
so
he threw out
the worst look. Such a horrible look.
Yeah, not great. But he mentioned Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, and Detroit as 4 teams that have interest in Cozens. We know Vancouver is another one. I believe Chicago is another one as well that has been in some contact.
Mm-hmm.
But before I let you get into the whole Cozens trade idea and fit and everything there, let me throw out something at you and see what you think about this. So,
Okay.
I have a theory I'm working. Okay.
Okay.
So, Dylan Cozens 100% was part of the Vancouver trade for Pettersson. Didn't happen yet. So, I don't find it coincidental that since that, we've had a LeBron leak. Now we've had a Kevin Weeks week of this team, that team, this team, that team. It seems an awful lot like Kevin Adams, who has done this in the past with Jack Eichel, has done this in the past with Casey Middlestat last year, leaking some things out that basically sending a message to Vancouver, okay, if we're not going to do Pettersson, and you know what? Look at these teams I have here. I got Toronto, Montreal, Calgary, Detroit. I got some teams here. Maybe I'll just trade them somewhere else if you don't want to do that. It comes off very much as a leaky push to Vancouver here of, are you sure you're really happy with Pettersson? And if you're not, well, I got these other things over here that I'll just go do that instead. So are you sure? Maybe you want to call me one more time and let's just discuss it.
Yeah, maybe. I think though the boat has been missed in that regard. I just don't see them trading both Miller and Pettersson. I don't think that franchise.
Eventually,
What, you think so?
Pettersson's going. Oh yeah, eventually.
Okay. I don't know. I have a hard time believing
in the season.
I think with what they're doing though, otherwise, I just have a hard time believing they're really looking to rebuild in such a significant way, like to really shake up their core that much. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. But it always feels like they've got somebody on the block who just doesn't end up getting traded. So, and maybe that doesn't happen. But yeah, if Adams feels like that's still alive, that's definitely the move to just start leaking out like, okay, I've got 2/3 of the league, as LeBron said, calling on this guy. So like, you're not the only show in town. Are you my favorite choice? Yeah. Am I going to hold this whole process up for you? No. So if that is some gamesmanship, great, good. About effing time. You did something like that. So wonderful. And that's maybe why I'm skeptical that's what's happening, because like I've got no evidence to suggest that that's something that would cross Kevin Adams' mind. But
well, like I said, there's a history of it though. He's done it. He did it last year at Middlestat. He had the Calgary leak before Eichel went to Vegas the next day.
True that. Okay, fair enough. But yeah, I don't know. It'd be great. I mean, if he turns around, Dylan Cozens and Bowen Byram for Elias Pettersson, I'll lose my mind. Like, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say all is forgiven, but that's a good push. Like, I'm cool with that, man. That's good stuff. But I guess we'll see. Let me ask you this. Let's say Vancouver calls you and says, like, look, it's just not happening. It's not happening this season. Like, maybe we talk about it in the summer. Do you think Adams jumps to another deal, or do you think he waits till the summer?
Depends. I think depends what would come his way on Cozens. Now, I think this might get to a good point that we mentioned earlier, is the Marcus Pettersson extension. What does that do for the Byram impact here? Even to an extent, Owen Power.
Hmm.
If I don't think the Sabres have any desire to move him, but either way, those are the two defensemen that were involved in it.
You can't. I'm sorry. Even for Peterson, you can't. I don't think you could trade Power. I don't
No,
think
and they're
that
not.
would be justified.
No, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, he's not untouchable, but
No.
anytime you come up in a conversation, and I've asked numerous times, there is zero desire to move him.
Yeah, I don't
Right
blame
now.
him. I don't like the revisionist history on, like, let's not pretend that at that age Rasmus Dahlin was Rasmus Dahlin. He wasn't. He had his struggles, and you even had a contingent of people saying, like, this is the time to trade him.
Yeah. We should know better than anybody that this takes some time.
Right. So I wouldn't be keen to trade Power at this point unless you're getting something ridiculous. But because I'm not ready to throw away his potential. And again, I think he gets a lot more flack than maybe he deserves. Has he been a bona fide number one overall pick at this age that you'd expect? No, you'd expect more from one for sure.
Mhm.
But I'm not ready to punt on him by any means. So, yeah, I don't blame them, I guess, for that stance, but yeah, Byram, you're right though. The Byram became more expensive, probably a little bit at least. Though that Pedersen deal is really good value for Vancouver, so maybe not. Yeah, I guess we'll see.
I mean, if you look at Vancouver's defense now, so they have Quinn Hughes signed for a couple more years.
Mm-hmm.
Philip Hronek is signed for a few more years. Marcus Pedersen just resigned. Carson Soucy has one more year left, although they've indicated that he's on the block now. Tyler Myers has one more year left on his deal, and then you have the Elias Peterson defenseman, who I think they like, in the picture now. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6 defensemen right there if you count Soucy.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe they can still have interest if they're like, well, we'll fire Soucy out there and we'll replace him with Byram. That could make some sense, as you can put together a nice, top 4 of Quinn Hughes, Philip Hronek, Marcus Pedersen, and Bowen Byram. That's not a bad top 4 for your defense.
Right.
So maybe there's still some interest there, but I think it makes it interesting. Maybe his cousin still needed. Of course, he's still required in that deal because you got to get a ton to replace, especially after trading Miller away. But does something else become more important now? Do they want your top prospect, whoever that would be now? I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Do they want a first round pick? Do they want something else? Or maybe they do still want Byram. I think that's the thing that's the most intriguing to me, especially with them getting Pedersen done so fast, Marcus Pedersen.
Right.
It definitely changes the dynamic a little bit of that trade.
Do you want to know something crazy?
Sure.
So my biggest reason I advocated against, which previously I was for it until I looked a little deeper, Carson Soucy, was the amount of penalties he takes.
Mm-hmm.
That has not changed at all this
year.
No.
A ton about it.
Oh my Lance! Like, his penalty differential is insane.
I think he took 2 in the game.
Dude, it's like top of the league. So in that regard alone, he is such a severe liability. And I don't think you were insinuating this, but like, if he was like you got to take Soucy back, if you're giving us Byram, I'd be like, no, I don't want it. No, thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if I would love that either. They had interest when he was a free agent, but
they did, and they had interest the trade deadline leading up to it too, when they were on the cusp of contending. I remember he was a name that was out there, and I was very for it then, just because like that defense, even with the Sabres on the fringe of the playoffs, was so abysmally horrible that I like give me something. Like, anything is pretty much an upgrade at this point. So I don't have to see Yogaru, Bryson, Riley still in whatever, that fringe group anymore, because none of them were inspiring in any way. But yeah, anyway, that's just a fun little Carson Soucy thing. I wanted to look. Everyone watching saw my eyes bug out of my head while you were talking. It had nothing to do with what you said. I pulled up his penalty stats. I'm like, oh my god, it's so bad still.
I didn't even see it. I was looking at my other screen over here.
Yeah, my eyes popped out of my head. Like, you said something like completely like not reaction worthy, and I'm just like, what the hell? Yeah, he has not improved that part of his game at all.
All right, so before I pull the trade board up here that we're going to get to, let me throw a Cozens hypothetical at you.
Okay.
His name popped up today on social media. Would you do in a 1-for-1 right now, Cozens for Zegras?
No.
No.
Nope.
So looking at their numbers,
Mm-hmm.
they are almost literally, from like an underlying perspective, the last 2 years are
They're
Spider-Man.
the Spider-Man meme. Yeah, that's
Yes.
why I wouldn't do it.
Identical.
You
Crazy.
did nothing. Like you literally just you traded Dylan Cousins for Dylan Cousins. Like it would be so silly.
So here's two things to consider, though.
Mm-hmm.
One, does a change of scenery help him at all? Because he looks pretty miserable in Anaheim, and I don't think he likes the coach he plays for.
Yeah, what a great change of scenery Buffalo would be.
Well, still. Two, you take Dylan Cousins that I have to pay him $7 million for the next 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get Zegras, who only got to pay 5.75 for at least one more year.
I would need to have like nothing else intriguing offered to me to do that. Like honestly, it would if it came down to it, right? I might even be inclined to keep Cousins, but regardless, if it came down to like gun to your head, like this is your best. If that's actually your best deal, do I ultimately do it? Probably, because at minimum, you've got a guy who's at least a little bit exciting. You like you said, the potential for a change of scenery, cool, like maybe. But boy, would that be super uninspiring to me.
I think I'm trying to convince myself it'd be fun, but I don't know if the results would be fun.
I think that it would take a lot more than that to like wash the taste of the other idea out of my mouth, which that being, Pedersen, like getting out, right? Like think about those comparatively.
That is adding gone and off the table, not possible.
No, I get that, but think of that comparatively though. Like you just spent 2 months talking about that really cool idea, and then you end up getting that, and you're just like, that's sour.
Right.
I don't like it. That's not what I was hoping for.
This could be cool, I guess. We'll see.
I'd be talking myself into something, which usually if I have to do that, it ends up being bad. Like if I have to be like, well, if all this goes right and, Mercury's in retrograde, like maybe we can make it. No, I hate that. Like I don't want to do that anymore, man.
Week, maybe like as a winger, you could find.
I want to be like certain something is good. And or like pretty sure at least, not like, well, if everything goes freaking perfectly, then yeah, it's gonna be good. I've done that for like 10 years, man. No. Give me something like definitively good, please.
All right. Speaking of definitively good, let's throw up our trade board here because we know from what you said, it is definitively good because you loved it so much from when I sent this to you earlier.
This is our money. Okay.
And he was like, all these guys are horrendous.
I did not say that.
No.
I like 2 of them.
Okay. So let's go through them. So I put out our trade board, if you will, for the trade deadline, Sabres specific. There's 7 players on it right now. We're not going to give the whole kingdom away, of course. So why not give you the top 5 at least that we'll discuss here? And we're going to add to that list. Like Zegras probably is going to end up on that list, and some other guys as we go will end up on the list too. So we'll go through the list here. We got Connor Murphy, number 1, right shot defenseman. Oliver Bjorkstrand, forward, 29 years old, 1 more year left. Jordan Spence, right shot defenseman, 23. He's very interesting, especially for a guy like me, a numbers guy. Pretty interesting idea. And then you have the 2 Calgary guys who I think likely, if they're not going to move Anderson, if they're not going to move Uyghur, if they're not going to move Kadri, and if you look past all of their trade protection guys, you get to Igor Sharangovich and you get to Matt Coronado. You can put Zara in this list too if you wanted to. But those are the 2 guys I picked out here to include.
Who did you say?
Zari was the last one.
Oh, Zari. Got it. Okay.
So
he was such a popular name in the Eichel idea.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
It'd be full circle if he actually does end up here.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. Okay. So let me go through my explanation for some of these guys, and you can jump in and share some of your thoughts too. So Connor Murphy, I think, is interesting as an Owen Power replacement. It's only 1 more year after this year, $4.4 million.
Bowen Byram replacement?
I'm sorry. As a Bowen Byram, yes. Doesn't have to be a Byram replacement, more of a replacement. It's not even a replacement. I misspoke. As a Owen Power partner, I should have said.
As you said, I was like, wait a minute.
Yep. Sorry. Yep. Replacing him with Owen Power is a terrible idea. An Owen Power partner makes sense as a right shot defenseman, veteran, big, covers in front of the net. He's 32, yes, but only 1 more year at 4.4. I think you can probably find something with Chicago there that they're trying, as a regroup, trying to get something done there. You could use one of your prospects, draft pick, whatever. I think that's definitely a doable deal. Bjorkstrand to me is super interesting. So he was healthy scratch at the beginning of the year, and that's when he kind of caught my attention. And I brought up at that time when we were pretending we were going to be a real team still and use that cap space. hey, man, maybe you want to go look at this guy. It makes a lot of sense. Now, there's trade protection here. These first two guys both have trade protection, so that is something you would have to go through. And maybe that's why Bjorkstrand isn't an option for them. I don't know. But let's say you get through that, 29 years old, the underlying numbers continue to be really, really strong on him on a pretty poor Seattle team. I think if you can get him in here, the way you said it, was it just another? Was it not just another, but it's another Jason Zucker? I agree, but I think they could use that. So I think for sure they can use that. He's here for one more year. You have him locked in, and then I think that would make sense. Jordan Spence, like I said, it's super interesting from an underlying perspective. He's smaller at 5'10", not a lot of size, but a right shot defenseman. A lot of people are saying Brant Clark will mention that he could be moved. The reports that came out of LA that that's not going to happen. But it seems like with Doughty back, someone on that blue line has to go, and they're looking for a forward. Jordan Spence, is in my head, is there a Jack Quinn, Jordan Spence kind of deal you can spin there? Because I would 100% do that. I don't know how much I like Jack Quinn or if that goes, but that's an option there. And like I said, Sharon Govich and Coronado are on here because with the Cozens connection to Calgary, those are the only two guys that I saw really would logically make sense.
Yeah, I'll start from the top. So Connor Murphy, he's almost Jake McCabe to me in the sense that I like him when he's healthy. The problem is that's not very often, and now he's old and unhealthy. And I don't know, man. I think your window for a potential Connor Murphy, because we've been talking about Connor Murphy for it feels like 3-4 years now.
Yeah.
I think that window's closed, man. He's 32. He's gonna be 33 next year. I don't see it anymore, man. He hasn't gotten any healthier like that. I mean, aside from I think 2 years ago, I don't think he's played more than 60 games in a season. So woof. I'm just really not a fan of that target. I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I like the player. I just don't think he's ever healthy enough, and now he's old.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Bjorkstrand, my main concern there is just what it would take to get him. I mean, he's producing points, which again, until it doesn't, it's a value of trade, or it's a driver of trade value to a degree. He produces. I know Seattle's in a bad spot, but I feel like a contending team that maybe has a little cap space would offer you more, and I wouldn't want to get into something resembling a bidding war for him. I think a player like that, the cap hit is one thing. I think if they retain, which I would think they'd be keen to do given where they are, he could get you a first round pick, late one. And I wouldn't want to do that. I'm not interested in that. Even, maybe a second, maybe. But, and again, when I said it was another Jason Zucker, I'm glad you pointed out, I didn't mean that in a derogatory way, because I think Jason Zucker's been one of the lone bright spots this year. But man, I guess it would really depend for me. What's the price of admission here? What am I actually paying to get this? Because in a vacuum, would I like to have him on this team? Yeah, he's an upgrade over 2/3 of your forwards at least. What would that cost me though? I think is my big concern. Maybe I'm over projecting there, but I think it would be maybe more than I'd be willing to stomach. Like you said, I love Jordan Spence. I really do. But I also, and as everybody knows, I have a deep-seated dislike for small defensemen. I don't need big, lumbering idiots. I don't need Darian Hatchers back there. But man, when a defenseman is that small, it makes me a little queasy. Unless they're Quinn Hughes or someone Cale Makar, someone just ridiculously talented. I like Jordan Spence a lot, and I think if you're I like the situation you kind of projected there. If you're doing a Quinn for Spence kind of thing, oh my god, all day I would do that without hesitation. Sharon Govich has just always struck me as a player who should be better than he is. I mean, I look at all of his tools, all the things that he's good at. And I'm just why are you not better? Why are you not more productive? What is it with you? I just
that big year last year. That was really the only year that popped. He's back this
right.
year. His numbers are not bad, but to your point, they should probably be better though.
He's the definition to me of a middle six forward, which is do I need another? Is he really going to move the needle for me in terms of production? I'm not so sure he will. And also he's, at this point in his career, he should be hitting his prime, and it just feels like he's never going to really hit his potential, because I think he's got amazing potential. I really like his raw tools. If you're talking to me when he's 23 years old and he's playing like he is, I'm into that idea a little more. I just think like, man, if he was going to hit his stride, it would be now, and I just don't know that that's coming. Coronado, I loved in his draft year, and I still like him. I looked at his underlings for the first time this year, and they were maybe more disappointing than I was hoping for. I still think there's something there. But as I said to you, if he's like your centerpiece or you're like your headliner coming back for Cozens, I'm probably kind of nauseous about that. Like, ugh, I feel like you could do better. But I like Coronado. I like him as an idea. If he's part of a package, great. I think there's something there worth a look, worth kicking the tires on. RFA, whatever, limited commitment. Uh, I still think there's a lot of potential there. I do truly like the player. I loved him coming out. But he again, he's only 22, but he hasn't shown me enough to be like, yeah, he's coming now. Like he's gonna hit that stride soon. It's just he hasn't quite capitalized on that, and it's not like Calgary's some kind of legendary team here. But at the same time, I would have liked to have seen more at this point. But that doesn't mean I'm ready to punt on the player. So I guess in a vacuum, my favorite idea here is Spence, just because of the perceived cost. I don't think it would be very costly to get him. I don't think in terms of assets going back to LA. And I think he's a very good player. Again, I have a little pause with his size, but looking at just at face value what he produces, he's a good right shot defenseman, man.
You know what I was just thinking about as you were talking?
What's
Is
that?
the epitome of a Los Angeles Kings forward. And it's a shame that his contract is up at the end of the year because I don't think he would get you Jordan Spence. But
Greenway?
Jordan Greenway.
Oh, that's where you're going.
Seems like the exact kind of fit the Kings would be looking for to add for the playoffs.
Interesting. That's probably right.
But again, I don't think they get you Spence because it's a rental.
Right.
Maybe it moves the needle if you package Quinn and Greenway together. Maybe. It's just hard. Like, the Spence thing is, I read a lot of, believe it or not, it's weird. I have a connection with a lot of Kings people and writers. So like I was reading some stuff because I know they're pretty packed on defense right now with Doughty coming back. They have Gavrikov, Mikey Anderson, Edmondson, Pence, Burrows, Englund, Clark. So they're pretty stacked on that blue line. Gavrikov's a free agent, so they could always move him too potentially.
Englund is still playing.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. He's only 29 years old, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
I thought he was so much older than that.
It's the same Englund, right? There's not another one on Andreas Englund, right? Yeah.
Wow.
He's been around forever.
Yeah, I like truly. I would have expected that he was much older. I would have pegged him like mid 40s or mid 30s.
I googled Englund hockey player.
Different Englund.
Yep,
it's a different one. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I was gonna say there's no way.
Like, Andreas doesn't sound right. And
no,
it's not.
It's Derek Englund is who I was thinking of.
Yep.
Yeah. I was gonna say there's no way he's 29. Derek with a Y. He's 42, not playing in the league anymore. Okay, I'm like, no, that dude's ancient. No way, man. Okay,
and it's spelled differently too. Derek Englund.
All right, I don't know who that player is. Gives you a gauge of how much I watch the LA Kings, but I don't know who that is. So
yeah. Okay, but I was just saying on Spence, like it's also like it's LA can be like we're not doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know, like about. All right, let's throw this at you.
Okay.
What if they said Cozens for Spence?
Ooh, because I am like mildly concerned about the degree to which LA's system kind of protects Spence, and he seems like maybe a guy who might not give you that when you go to Buffalo. He might get exposed. I don't know if I love it.
The catch there, though, too, is LA has limited cap space. Like, you'd probably have to take something else back.
Yeah.
Take some money.
I think that...
All right, let me throw this at you.
Sorry, go ahead.
What if I threw... Now, he's going to be a free agent when the year is over.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're looking for a little bit more physicality and a player who can still play, Tanner Jeannot and Jordan Spence for Cozens. It starts to make the money a little bit closer to working there for LA.
Yeah. I think that I think it only excites me like slightly more than the Zegras for Cozens idea. Like it's like maybe a little better. I think if those are my two, yeah, I probably do it. But also, I'm not in love with that idea. I liked your first one better. The Quinn
Straight up
for
Cousins for Spence.
Quinn for Spence.
Oh, Quinn for Spence. I like that one better too, but I don't know if
the
I like
valuation is more even there. I think Cousins maybe but then again, Cousins has been like bad, and I think I'm maybe hanging on to like
I think you're hanging on to that 31 goal season. Like
I'm hanging on to the name Dylan Cousins, not actually what he's doing, and I think I have that weird same feeling. Though I did say like I remained at the time extremely agnostic about the Byram Middlestat trade. I thought it was like okay, like I didn't feel one way or the other about it. But I think I'm doing the same thing where maybe I'm overvaluing 1 year of really good and thinking like that might be forever, or he might get back to it if his brain unscrambles from getting caved in. But maybe I need to chew on it, but like maybe it wouldn't.
It's one of those
make
ones
me,
I feel like you'd go walk around the block and come back and go, okay, fine. Like it's kind of one of those.
Right.
That's one of those ones, right? Yeah.
I would not be like clapping my hands like, oh, he did it. Like,
Yeah.
Oh my God. Adams, maybe he does have some juice. I'd be like, yeah, okay, that's an Adams move. Like, cool. Like if everything goes right, this could be great.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well,
it's funny too, because I wonder if the Avalanche fans look at Byram's numbers, like the analytics guys look at Byram's numbers away from Dahlin this year, and are like, yeah, well, that was a wash of a trade. While we all think it's like a consensus win.
They should, yeah.
But they're probably looking at it like this was a nothing burger. This didn't move the needle for either team, and like in a way they'd be right. But yeah, just interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure like the analytics guys and the very smart ones, by the way, in the Colorado front office are just like seeing they're like, Dahlin is cheating. Like he's
right. This guy is a result of Dahlin. But again, it's just funny because I think for Sabres fans, that's a consensus win of a trade, and I don't know how outside of Buffalo it would be seen as anything more than like a wash at this point.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. An hour and 12 minutes.
Not bad.
Not bad at all. I didn't think we'd go that long. We had some good conversations.
We did. Like riding a bike, buddy.
Riding a bike. So 100. So, but this is, by the way, this is our second 100. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because we did the other one there, and then we switched.
What was that live show we did?
We did it at that coffee place. Whatever.
That's right.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name. I feel like
I think it's actually closed now, unfortunately. But yeah.
Oh, well, I feel like less of a jerk then.
Yeah, with Bill, our 100th then. But yeah, I mean, 100 for Expected Buffalo flew by, man. Like it was, and we even had some breaks in there too. Like especially last season, like we didn't do podcasts for like 2 months because it was hell.
What were we gonna do it about? The same screeking about how horrible everything is. Yeah, that's so funny because I saved that. And I know people were commenting like, "I hope Anthony goes off." I'm like, I can't for episode 100, man. I got to keep it like positive. It can't be. Maybe next time. Maybe on the next episode, I'll be a little more.
It's so hard to get mad about anything legitimately anymore. Like,
buddy, I can barely like. It's whatever, my engagement level has decreased obviously this year, and like that's just because they're so bad, and like how can I still be mad when I'm not spending the same amount of time on them? Like, okay, I'm more mad at them for wasting my time year over year than anything, and this year like I just haven't given it to them as much. I'm still watching, of course, but I'm just like I'm not gonna nitpick forward combinations or like, why is he doing this? Like, oh, if he did this, it would improve his expected goals by 0.1%. I don't give a shit. Like, okay, who cares? They're so far out of it and they're so hapless. Like, what would it matter?
Yeah, right.
They simply don't have the horses. That's what it boils down to. Any topic, you're right. The end of the day, your message is they don't have it. Yeah.
No, but they got me twice this year. I'll admit they got me 2 times.
Okay.
And I'm sure you probably know what the 2 games are: the first Colorado game and the second Colorado game. Those were 2 times. The first one, I was probably the most mad I've been in a long time. I was ready to go down to the stadium, to the arena, and start like kicking the walls.
Oh, they got you in that way. I thought they got you like they hooked you in.
No. Like they made me mad. Like those are the 2 games, and they made me legitimately angry. And then the second one made me mad again, which resulted in me throwing my phone on the ground and putting a crack in my screen. So they got me twice this year. I'll give you credit for that.
What's the word? It's such an easy word that I'm just forgetting. My complacency, which isn't the word I'm trying to remember, but I'm going to use it. I think that really kicked in. And I remember Game 7 of the 13-game win streak where I'm just like, it's done. Like, they're done. Because, like, at that point, I was like, man, if this goes on and they don't, like, rip a couple together, people don't realize how hard it is at that point to get yourself back in. Because people think, like, oh, you just start winning games, you climb the standings. No, they've won 4 in a row, and they've made 1 point of ground, made up 1 point of ground, I believe.
So they played at a 94-point pace the last 19, 18 games, and they've made up 1 or 2 points.
Right. So, like, it was never going to be enough after that. And then from there on through that losing streak, I was just like hate watching. I'm like, okay, they're done. They're cooked. Like, how long can this streak go? How embarrassing can we get? Because this is just, it's done. And I think that 7th game in a row loss, I'm like, wow, it's over. And it's so early. Like, it's so early. It's the earliest it's ever been over. And I was just like, wow, man. Like, I don't think in our wildest dreams we could have imagined it would have been this bad. And so, like, at that point, I was like, all right, I got to disengage here. Like, I can't do this for 60 more games, man. Like, there's no way I've got this in me.
I know.
But yeah.
Okay, so I'll end here by acknowledging the chat one time because someone threw a bonus question in, and I will quickly answer it. So the question was, I'll go first, and you can say what you think. The question was, will Zucker resign? I think that he will. I think he does 2 years for around $6 million. That's pure gut. By the way, don't anybody think I'm reporting that? That's just pure gut guess.
Yeah, I think that's right. The talk has been that he's receptive to an extension, and I think if you're going to be Kevin Adams and use the fucking sorry, I tried to go whole episode.
Okay, it's all right. We're on YouTube. It's going on like Netflix now for wrestling.
Yeah,
we're on YouTube.
Fair enough.
It's okay.
Fair enough. I think if you are going to use the palm tree line and then not extend a guy who like actually wants to stay and is productive, then you're totally lost at sea. So I think if he wants to stay, you extend him unless someone's offering you like a first round pick. Then in that case, leverage that for something better, maybe. Right. But I don't think anyone's giving you that for Zucker. I don't think Pegula has any appetite to retain money for some reason, to get you a first. Like, say, you retain half, I'll give you a first. I don't think that's even on the table.
Yeah.
So I think you extend him just because if it's truly as impossible as you've made it seem to get talent here, it's not. But if you want to, if you're going to play that card and then not extend a guy who actually has an appetite to stay, then what are we doing here, man?
Not to mention he's a guy who can help you sell to other veterans too.
Sure. And just a quick story. I love Jason Zucker as a person. Just because I went to one of those meet the Sabres things. I brought my kid, and they were very apprehensive. It was the first table we went up to, and it was Zucker, Tuck, and I forget who else was at the table. But my kid's favorite player is Alex Tuck, and very nervous going into that. Like, oh my god, meet Alex Tuck. Oh my god, when is he at the table? I think I got to ask 46 questions in the line. I'm like, relax. He's not gonna bite your head off. He's just a normal guy. And Zucker's first, and he was just like so nice to my kid, like ridiculous nice. And he's like, oh my god, I've got 2 your age too. He's like, what's your what do you like to do? Blah blah. And like just like made them so much more comfortable in that setting, willing to go up to players. She's throwing shots at Samuelson, like, whoa, big guy, just like it wouldn't have happened otherwise, right? And he's talking to my kid, and he like closes with so who's your favorite player? Like, kind of like trying to be like you now, Jason Zucker.
Yeah,
and
right.
He just turns and points to Alex Tuck, and Tuck just looks at Zucker like still me, buddy. Nice try though. But he was just such a genuinely nice human being, and so he's one of my favorites just because he made my kid stay, and that's important to me, I guess.
I mean, it's an important part, right? That shouldn't be overlooked, and that's good story. Good story to end it on, for sure. Okay, so 100 in the books. Anthony, thank you very much for joining us again. So we'll definitely get you on here more now that we're in a new era, if you will, of doing Touch Buffalo podcasts. So you people who will join me, you will get me again tomorrow. But what Thursdays is going to be is it's going to be Mailbag Thursday. So look for a tweet on Twitter, X, whatever, or Blue Sky if you're on there. I'll put it out there too. I will take questions, and that will be the podcast. I assure you it will not go an hour and 19 minutes. Probably not. But we'll have some fun anyways. We'll go through some questions fans have. and that is what our Thursday episodes will be. So, as I said, Wednesday one, Thursday one, and then Monday's our other one. And then Monday, when I do Monday's podcast, you're going to see a different background behind me because this area over here, we can see the toys in the background. That's going to be the new podcast space. So this wall will have some fun stuff on the back of it behind me. The new desk comes tomorrow. So
I see you already started with the Bandits banner.
yes, I started it because like there was this
right there.
me here that was on this wall over here.
Mm-hmm.
So I moved it because I'm like, I'm gonna put some stuff up, and then like I was like hanging things up, see what it looked like, and I was like, I'll just put the Bandits thing here for now, and then walked away.
That's good.
So Monday you'll see a different view behind me. So definitely tune in for that.
Awesome.
All right, Anthony. Well, thanks everybody for watching along. This, of course, I mean, if you're watching, probably won't listen to the podcast version, but it will be in the podcast version as well. Or if you're listening right now, you're like, yeah, I know I'm listening, dummy. So yeah, so thanks everybody, and we will talk tomorrow. See ya.